Greetings and welcome. Previously we took a look at Flint Castle. Today we're going to discover what else there is to be seen at Flint Castle. Every year thousands of motorists pass through the North East Wales town of Flint. Most won't realise that there is more to Flint than just a functional small town. Today we'll discover what sits right beside Flint Castle and a story of immense tragedy. The River Dee estuary might at first appear to be tranquil even at high tide. However, the sands, the mud banks and the waters can be incredibly dangerous at any time. We'll discover later just how treacherous they can be, so stick around for that. One of the more prominent features behind Flint Castle is the RNLI inshore lifeboat station. First established in 1966, this purpose-built boathouse was constructed in 1985. It's home to a D-class inflatable lifeboat which can be launched along this slipway. However, the boat is also small enough that if necessary, it can be towed behind a vehicle to a more suitable launching point. The crews have received 4 awards for gallantry. They are often kept busy on the Dee estuary, rescuing and helping the many local fishermen. They often get called on to do much more than this though. They've rescued at least 2 dolphins. And notably in 1990, the residential area of Tywyn and Pensarn beyond Hryl was flooded during extreme high tides and gale force winds. They helped around 100 people to safety, many being rescued from their homes. Not bad at all for a small boat with 3 crew and a maximum capacity of just 8 persons. At the end of the lifeboat slipway is this beacon. It's part of a chain of beacons which are lit to mark important events such as royal jubilees. The beacon is called Barbara's Beacon. From what I've been able to find out, Barbara and her husband have been dedicated fundraisers locally for the RNLI. They were involved heavily with the appeal for the current lifeboat based at Flint, and the boat is actually called Lady Barbara. There are 3 modern public sculptures placed around Flint Castle. They were designed and sculpted by local artist Mike Owens. This first one is the fisherman's wife. It depicts medieval times, maybe around the period when the castle was built, and is a fisherman's wife who's tending to her husband's catch. It reflects the local importance of fishing throughout the years. The second one is close to the lifeboat station. Appropriately, it depicts a modern-day RNLI lifeboat volunteer looking out to keep watch over the waters of the Dee. The third sculpture is some distance away beyond the castle. This one depicts a World War I soldier sat reading a letter. It honours the people of Flint who went to fight in the war, with many never coming back home. The site of the castle was bought by the Flintshire Territorial Association to be the headquarters of the 5th Battalion Royal Welsh Fusiliers. No trace of their building remains today. The soldier's view of Flint Castle is similar to that in works of art by well-known people such as Ellis Lowry and even J.M.W. Turner. It's certainly a pleasant and quiet place to sit in contemplation. As appealing as the views might be, staying on the safety of land is important. The sandbanks and mudflats might be brimful of wildlife and are certainly a great location for birdwatchers to look across. However, even at low tide, the ground is boggy at best. When the tide turns, it travels fast. At spring tides, the waters can still reach the walls of the castle. The greenery we see is not all luscious grass. It's salt marsh with rough, coarse vegetation. Until perhaps the 19th century, these salt marshes on both the Welsh and English sides of the estuary were used extensively for grazing cattle. Because the grazing was of very poor quality, the cattle owners could often graze their animals free of charge without paying any money to landowners. But because the salt marsh was unfenced, cattle would often roam quite some distance. Indeed, at certain places, it was possible to wade across the estuary at low tides. This meant that cattle owned by some of the poorest agricultural workers could easily become lost. In the mid-1800s, the famous British author Charles Kingsley was canon of Chester Cathedral. He heard a popular local story of tragedy on the Dee estuary. No one is sure whether the story is true or folklore. However, it is very believable. Mary had been sent out by her father, a local farmer, to bring the cattle home. It was a sunny, warm afternoon, and Mary meandered her way, enjoying the fresh air and warm glow of the late afternoon sunshine. As dusk approached, a mist crept across the salt marshes. Mary soon became disorientated, trying desperately to find the cattle. She could hear them calling, but just could not find their direction. Eventually, she stumbled into the fast approaching tide and sadly drowned. Her body was recovered the following day by local fishermen. Legend says that at first they mistook her hair for floating river debris or a passing fish. In 1850, Charles Kingsley penned his poem, The Sands of Dee. And then in 1912, with some poetic license, he wrote a silent black and white film with the same name. It's well worth looking out if you're interested in that kind of thing. For copyright, I won't be including it in this video, but it's called The Sands of Dee. O Mary, go and call the cattle home, and call the cattle home, and call the cattle home, across the sands of Dee. The western wind was wild and dank with foam, and all alone went she. The western tide crept up along the sand, and o'er the sand, and round the sand, as far as I could see. The rolling mist came down and hid the land, and never home came she. Oh, is it weed, or fish, or floating hair? A tress of golden hair? A drowned maiden's hair? Above the nets at sea? Was never salmon yet that shone so fair among the stakes of Dee? They rowed her in across the rolling foam, the cruel, crawling foam, the cruel, hungry foam, to her grave beside the sea. But still the boatmen hear her call the cattle home, across the sands of Dee. Local legend says that even today, on misty evenings, as the tide races in and along the Dee, it is still possible to hear Mary calling out to her father's cattle, and the cattle despondently lowing in answer. I hope that you've enjoyed watching this video as much as I've enjoyed making it. I'm neither a professional historian nor a professional videographer. I simply enjoy discovering and learning about the world, whether local to Flintshire, the northwest of England, or further afield. I've done my best to research the facts, and I do hope that they are accurate. I'd love to read your comments, and I would obviously like to improve my work as this channel grows. Meanwhile, thanks for watching and have a grand tour!